Welcome, everyone. Today, we are discussing one of the most critical transitions in any industrial setting, the first 90 days of maintenance and reliability management. The goal of this session is to provide you with a field-tested system to see risk clearly, stabilize work, and ultimately build the momentum necessary for long-term improvement. We will focus on a three-pillared approach: diagnose, control, and improve. When you walk through the door on day one, you aren't starting with a clean slate. You are inheriting a system and its associated risks. The cost of reactive maintenance is already embedded in your plant's budget. To put this in perspective, data from this shows that establishments in the highest reactive groups suffer 3.3 times more downtime and a staggering 16 times more defects compared to their proactive peers. Your first task is to understand the magnitude of this inherited burden. To manage effectively, you must realize that you are actually looking at three different versions of the plant. First is the physical truth, what the actual equipment, leaks, and vibrations are telling you. Second is the system truth, what your CMMS and drawings claim to be true. And third is the human truth, the tribal knowledge held by your operators and technicians. Your job is to reconcile these three perspectives to find the reality of your operation. Our leadership premise is simple: diagnose first, do not demolish. It is tempting to come in and change everything immediately, but change must follow evidence. We start by observing how work really flows. Then we stabilize, protecting safety and critical assets to control immediate exposure. Finally, we align, building ownership with the workforce. The goal isn't to prove the old way was wrong, but to make the next decision better. We execute this through a structured 90-day operating model. The sequence matters. Truth leads to control, which leads to momentum. In the first 30 days, we diagnose and establish trust. In days 31 to 60, we stabilize by cleaning the backlog and auditing PM quality. Finally, in days 61 to 90, we mobilize by agreeing on KPIs and starting visible improvements. No phase is truly complete until the decisions are owned by both operations and maintenance. As a new manager, there are 6 credibility traps that can destroy your influence early on. These include announcing reorganizations before you understand the work, purging the backlog just to make a dashboard look better, or buying new technology before fixing basic work processes. Remember, fast action is only useful when it contains immediate risk. For everything else, you must earn the evidence first. Your first week is about establishing your license to lead. You must be visible in 4 key areas: safety, by knowing high hazard processes; people, by meeting every shift and listening; production, by understanding bottlenecks; and governance, by confirming your authority and spending limits. These initial commitments form the foundation of your leadership. Effective listening happens where the work actually breaks. Don't just ask for opinions. Ask about constraints. Ask operators what leaks or gets bypassed. Ask technicians what turns a short job into a long one. And ask stores which stockouts threaten production. By focusing on these friction points, you identify the real barriers to reliability. When you walk the plant, do it with a structured assessment mindset. Follow the energy and the material, not the visitor route. Look for containment issues like leaks, protection gaps like disabled alarms, and the physical condition of the assets. Pay close attention to workflow access and operating care. Your mantra for these walks should be: photograph, tag, assign, and verify. A critical rule for new managers: do not manage from contaminated data. Before you trust a metric, validate its meaning. Does the asset identity in the CMMS match the floor? Are emergency and preventive work coded consistently? If the input data is flawed, your decisions will be too. Take the time to ensure that labor, parts, and failure data are captured accurately. Rather than tracking 120 different KPIs, start with 12 foundational numbers to establish a baseline. These should cover business outcomes like production loss, work system metrics like reactive work versus schedule compliance, and capability indicators like stockouts. Use your first month to define these clearly so that future targets are set within a valid operating context. By the end of your diagnosis, You should have a diagnostic profile score through 8 lenses, ranging from safety and mechanical integrity to data governance. The shape of the gaps in this spider chart is often more telling than the average score. This profile should be a cross-functional assessment that highlights where the system is strongest and where it is most vulnerable. Moving into our first deep dive, critical assets. The fundamental question here is, where can this plant hurt the business? We must translate consequences into focus before we can effectively allocate our limited maintenance resources. Your asset hierarchy defines the battlefield. Criticality isn't credible if you don't know where the boundaries are. You must verify the logic of how systems, equipment, and subassemblies are linked. On the floor, ensure you can identify the functional boundary and the asset owner for every maintainable item, as this creates the structure for all subsequent data. Criticality is calculated as consequence times likelihood times exposure. However, a score is only useful if the decision rule is visible. We evaluate safety and environmental impact, production loss, redundancy, and lead time for recovery. By quantifying these factors, we can prioritize work based on actual business risk rather than who shouts the loudest. It's important to remember that criticality is a workshop, not just a spreadsheet. The scores must survive cross-functional challenges. Operations knows the workarounds. Maintenance knows the repairability. Engineering knows the design margins. And supply chain knows the lead times. Bringing these voices together ensures the risk ranking reflects the total reality of the plant. For your top 20 most critical assets, you need one-page ownership. This control sheet should document the asset's function, dominant failure modes, and the current protection strategy. It explicitly identifies the owner and any known exposures, like a standby pump that hasn't been tested, turning a high-level ranking into a specific operational action plan. We control criticality by understanding failure modes. Condition-based monitoring only has value if we act while options still exist. This is the P2F interval, the time between a potential failure being detected and a functional failure occurring. We must ask, what detects this mode? How early does it do so? And what specific decision does it trigger? Reliability is about choosing the lowest cost strategy to control risk. More PM does not necessarily mean more reliability. We balance run to failure for low consequence items, time-based PM for age-related wear, condition-based monitoring for detectable warnings, and function tests for hidden protections. If none of these work, we look at redesign or capital investment. Section 2 focuses on the backlog. The question here is, what risk is hiding in the queue? Our goal is to turn thousands of messy requests into a controlled, prioritized, and executable inventory of work. We must view the backlog as a measure of risk, not just a count of work orders. A low count can be deceptive if it hides unsafe or unexecutable work. We focus on 4 elements: the consequence of delay, the actual scope of work, the readiness of parts and permits, and clear ownership of who decides the timing. Before you measure the backlog, you must cleanse it. This means validating that a defect is real, clarifying the symptoms, ranking the risk, and then making a disposition. Some work will be planned now, some monitored, and some canceled. Cancellation is a legitimate decision. Just be sure to record why the risk was accepted or transferred. When prioritizing, remember that age and risk answer different questions. A very old job like a label update might be low risk, while a brand new finding of corrosion under insulation is high risk. Use the age of work to expose process delays in your system, but always use the risk level to decide the actual sequence of execution. The hallmark of a healthy system is ready backlog, the planner's finished product. Work should never enter the weekly schedule if it still has unanswered questions. A ready job has a clear scope, estimated labor, reserved parts, identified tools, and confirmed permits. If the crew has to hunt for parts after the job starts, the planning process has already failed. To prevent the backlog from relapsing into chaos, you need a weekly control cycle. This rhythm moves decisions forward, reviewing risk on Thursday, freezing scope on Friday, committing resources on Monday, and escalating constraints daily. The cycle concludes on Friday with a learning session to capture feedback and update the backlog for the next week. Section 3 addresses PM quality. We need to shift the conversation from the sheer volume of PMs to their technical effectiveness. Does the work actually prevent the failures that matter? Be careful. High PM compliance can hide poor reliability. Completing 95% of your PMs proves execution. But if you still have repeat failures on those same assets, the tasks aren't providing technical value. The goal is detection and prevention, not just checking a box. To improve, you must audit PM quality at the task level. Sample your most critical PMs and check for 7 qualities. Is the failure mode explicit? Is the method clear? Is there an objective acceptance limit? Does an abnormal result trigger a clear next step? Audit your highest consequence assets first, as these provide the most significant risk reduction. PM optimization should be driven by evidence, not opinion. When you select an asset for review, verify its failure history and decide whether to keep, rewrite, change the interval, or even delete the PM. Never delete a PM just because it never finds a problem until you've confirmed exactly what risk it was originally designed to control. Every plant needs a lane for defect elimination to deal with bad actors. If you are repeatedly repairing the same pump seal or conveyor trip, that isn't a strategy, it's a failure. You must contain the immediate issue, analyze the physical mechanism of failure, and then eliminate the root cause through better design, installation, or operation. Section 4 looks at people and competence. A strategy is only as good as the team's ability to execute it. We need to turn experience and role clarity into a visible control for reliability. An org chart tells you who reports to whom, but a competency matrix exposes actual risk. Assess your team based on demonstrated capability in areas like precision lubrication or vibration analysis. This helps you identify where you're dependent on a single hero and where you need to invest in training to close system-level gaps. Individual heroics are not sustainable. The team needs an operating system. This is a cadence of meetings that converts effort into execution. Daily 15-minute huddles handle break-in work. Weekly meetings manage the schedule. Monthly reviews look at PM effectiveness. And quarterly sessions address long-term strategy and succession planning. Role clarity removes waiting and rework. By using a RACI matrix, accountable, responsible, consulted, informed, you define who actually owns a decision. For example, operations might be accountable for the weekly schedule, while maintenance is responsible for executing. Defining these rights up front prevents friction and ensures accountability. Capability development should be built around real work. Training is only valuable when it changes performance on the floor. We follow a 5-step path: observing the task, practicing under coaching, demonstrating independent mastery, sustaining that standard, and eventually coaching others. This ensures skills are actually transferred to the job. Section 5 covers stores and spares. Our goal is to ensure the right part is available when it's needed without turning the storeroom into an expensive, unmanaged museum. A warehouse can be full of parts, yet still be operationally empty if those parts are wrong or unusable. We assess stores' health through 5 failure modes: poor identity, lack of linkage to assets, stockouts, or physical condition, like rusted bearings, and lack of inventory control. Physically audit your critical spares. Don't just trust the report. Deciding which spares to stock is a risk-based decision, not a popularity contest. We weigh the failure consequence against supply lead time and demand uncertainty. If the plant can't operate safely without the part, and there is no local repair option or redundancy, it qualifies as a critical spare that requires strict control. We segment inventory into 4 categories based on lead time and consequence. Strategic stock involves high consequence, long lead items that we must own and audit. Risk-based stock might involve supplier agreements for short lead items. By categorizing parts this way, we can apply specific policies for quantity, preservation, and ownership to each group. Section 6 is about shutdown readiness. We need to move away from optimistic percent complete dashboards and toward evidence-based gates to ensure an outage is truly executable. Outage readiness should pass through 6 specific gates: scope, engineering, materials, work packages, schedule, and startup. A single missing critical item can invalidate an otherwise green dashboard. Gate status should be binary. You either pass or you have a failing condition that must be addressed before moving forward. The work package is the fundamental unit of outage readiness. An activity is not ready for the schedule until the package is complete with scope, method, resources, materials, safety requirements, and testing documentation. For high-risk work, package completeness must be field verified to ensure no surprises during the execution window. Startup discipline is what protects your outage investment. Reaching mechanical completion is not a green light to start. You must reconcile design changes, accept test results, restore all safety interlocks, and ensure operators are trained on any changes. Any remaining punch list items must have accepted owners and firm completion dates. Section 7 brings us to KPIs and governance. We need a small, focused measurement system that connects high-level business outcomes to the daily behaviors of the workforce. Our measurement architecture connects 3 levels. Business outcomes like availability are lagging indicators. Work processes like schedule compliance are leading indicators. And enablers like data and parts availability are the foundation. We don't manage these as if they're interchangeable. We manage the enablers to drive the outcomes. Your first dashboard should have no more than 10 decision grade measures. These cover outcomes, risk, flow, execution, and support. Crucially, no metric should enter the dashboard until its definition is documented and you have high confidence in the data. Every metric must have an owner and a specific action trigger. Management reviews should not just be a narration of a dashboard. They should be structured risk conversations that end in decisions. When a metric is off track, discuss the evidence, evaluate the options, whether to repair, redesign, or defer, and then recommend a course of action. This ensures the meeting drives actual risk reduction. The 30-60-90-day roadmap converts all these findings into own work. In the first month, you diagnose and map stakeholders. In the second, you stabilize through backlog cleansing and audits. In the third, you mobilize by defining KPIs and securing funding for the risk roadmap. This phased approach ensures the program remains bounded and executable. At day 90, your executive readout should contain no surprises. It's a 5-page summary of the risk picture, system baseline, critical assets, execution health, and the improvement roadmap. If the executives are surprised by what you present, it means the communication system failed long before the presentation started. The ultimate test of your first 90 days is whether you leave behind a system that can run next Monday without you. You succeeded if there is one shared picture of risk, one ranked asset list, one controlled schedule, and one gated readiness process. The goal is clarity, control, and confidence, not dependency on you as the manager. To continue the learning journey, I've compiled a list of authoritative resources. These include NASA's RCM guide, ISO standards for asset management, and technical videos on criticality and planning. These resources provide the professional standards and practical guidance needed to sustain the momentum you've built. Finally, I want to acknowledge the sources of the data and evidence used in this framework. From NIST's economic studies to SMRP's body of knowledge, all claims are traceable to industry-leading standards. The visual credits and specific licenses are detailed in the speaker notes. Thank you for your time. Now let's get to work on building a more reliable future.